Writing with Structure and Style, Tips and Tricks for Succeeding. My name is Steph Bennett, I'm a Learning Development Tutor and I'm here to help you today. Today's aims: to develop knowledge and understanding of practices in academic writing in preparation for upcoming assignments. We will look at academic style, what to do and what to avoid, essay format and peel paragraphs. Academic style. Academic writing should be clear, concise and understandable. Here are some things to consider. Have I planned my work? Is my work focused? Is it structured well? Is my work backed up by evidence from literature? Is my work referenced correctly using the Academic Integrity Guide? Does my writing have a formal tone? Assignment formats and subject specialisms may differ, but there are general characteristics of academic style that work across all disciplines. Let's get talking. Well, as we're online, let's get thinking. Why do we use academic style in our writing at university? Can you list 3 reasons? Pause the video for 3 minutes and jot down your ideas. Academic writing has a clear structure. It uses signposting language and is written clearly and concisely, because readers need to follow your argument. It has an impersonal style, because arguments are based on evidence and not opinions or emotion. It doesn't use cliches or slang, because academia is international and your audience may not have English as a first language. It uses technical language, so you can be specific about your points within your specialist area. And finally, it uses citations and references, so your reader can find your sources, to show that your points are based in evidence and to give credit where credit is due to the authors whose work you have drawn on. Myth-busting academic writing. Big words? No, we're not looking for that. Complicated writing? We're not looking for that. Long paragraphs? Definitely not. Getting the right answer? We're not looking for that either. Appropriate words? Yes. Clear writing? Yes. Focused paragraphs using a peel structure? Yes. And constructing an answer, because there might not be a right answer. What is structure and style then? Structure is the way in which your ideas are organised, and ideally they should be logical, easy for the reader to follow, and balanced. Style is the tone and voice of your writing, and it should be formal. It should follow academic conventions, and it should remain objective, looking at both sides of the argument. Elements of structure and style. Think about your word choice and selecting the best words to get your meaning across. Think about your sentence structure and arranging them accurately and effectively for that perfect flow. And finally, paragraph structure. Present your ideas in a clear and logical way, using peel. And you need to think ultimately about who your audience is. When writing, our tone and style depend on who will be reading it. Your assessor may not know you. They may be blind marking your assignment. So your academic voice and style must be clear. Academic voice. Let's take a look at this little paragraph here. I'll try and read it for you. A diminutive yet intrepid arachnid commenced a perilous pursuit to scale the tremendous heights of a perpendicular conduit designed for the passage of hydrogen dioxide. Unexpectedly, torrential precipitation cascaded forth and swept the many-legged climber away to plummet back down the chute. I'm going to stop there. I'm not going to read any more. This is really overly complicated writing. Can you tell what it is? Did you get it right? It's Incy Wincy Spider, or you might know it as Itsy Bitsy Spider. This is not what we're looking for. Remember those 3 things: clear, concise, and understandable. That's what we're going for. So let's have a look at sentence structure and finding that flow. Can you tell which of the following 2 examples flows better and why? Sentence structure is, ultimately, at the heart of good quality academic writing. because it helps to clarify the ideas being discussed and, when done correctly, can be used to draw attention to the most important points being made by the author, which can help to make the argument more effective. Or, ultimately, sentence structure is at the heart of good quality academic writing. This is because it helps to clarify the ideas being discussed. When done correctly, it can be used to draw attention to the author's most important points. As a result, it can help to make the argument more effective. Which flows better and why? Did you get it right? Yes, it is example 2. Example 1 is what we call a run-on sentence. It's a sentence that runs over 3 lines and it doesn't feature a full stop until the end. So essentially, the reader gets lost in what you're trying to say and the ideas don't come across very clearly. Example 2 is broken down with 4 full stops, so the reader can easily absorb what you're trying to say. It uses signposting language like ultimately, this is because, when done correctly, as a result, and that helps to signpost the reader through the argument and what you're trying to say. So when you're writing academically, you're going for the second example and not the first. Punctuation. So we just had a little look at what happens when we use punctuation ineffectively. Punctuation is an important set of symbols to help make the meaning of your sentences clearer, as we've just seen. So you might be thinking, well, how do I use punctuation effectively? And it always helps to proofread your work out loud. Where do you need to take a breath? Do you need a full stop or a comma or a semicolon? Where do you need to pause for effect? Do you need a full stop there? Where do you need to end a sentence? Is that a full stop? Where do you need to break up a sentence? Do you need to be using commas or semicolons or full stops? And another helpful hint, try to avoid rhetorical questions in academic writing. Try not to ask questions of your reader. Try to inform them instead. And try and sway away from the use of exclamation points in academic writing. Exclamation points tend to be used in more expressive styles of writing. Structure. Let's get thinking again. In a standard academic essay, what do you need to include in the introduction, the main body, and the conclusion? Pause the video for 4 minutes and jot down your ideas. Here is an example essay layout. Your introduction, you can maybe allocate 10% of your word count to it, but this is totally flexible. Start with a hook sentence. Outline the topic, draw in the reader with a catchy one-liner. Move to the context. Lay the contextual foundations for the reader. Give them some brief background information on the topic. You may start to draw on your first citations here. Maybe you need to define specific terms. Maybe you need to briefly touch on what happened in the past, or touch on what's happening now, or maybe a mix of both, what happened in the past and what's happening now. Then we move to the thesis statement. What message do you want to convey throughout the essay? What's your overall argument? For other assignment types, you might exchange the thesis statement for focus and purpose, explaining what the assignment will explore and why. And finally, a map. Signpost the reader through the essay, and it might sound a little bit like, accordingly, this essay will begin by discussing, subsequently it will explore, concluding that. Main body, approximately 80% of the word count. Yes, this is totally flexible. This is where you present the main bulk of the information about the topic. It will answer your essay question or respond to your brief's instructions. It will be presented in a logical narrative for the reader, using peel paragraphs. Approximately 200 to 250 words, again that's flexible. And we'll be discussing more about this in just a moment. It will feature quotes or paraphrases from sources, and it will also critique arguments, theories, practices, models and frameworks. It's all about critical thinking. Finally, the conclusion, approximately 10% of the word count, again, totally flexible. You'll revisit the thesis statement. What did you set out to convey in the essay and why? Then you'll summarise your key arguments or ideas explored. You'll reiterate their significance. And finally, you'll close with next steps by considering the implications of your argument or exploration. Does it contribute a new understanding of your topic? Can it be applied to different contexts? Are there gaps that warrant further research? Does it lead to suggestions to improve professional practice? Can it be connected to a broader debate or theme? Peel the layers. So I mentioned earlier that I would be discussing peel paragraphs. And here we go. We start with a point. What point do you want to make in the paragraph about the topic you're exploring? We move to evidence. Is there evidence in the literature to back up the point you're trying to make? Theories, or case studies, or statistics, or maybe even your own professional practice. We move to the explanation. You need to now explain the evidence thoroughly. What does it suggest to you? Why is it significant? How might it be interpreted? And finally, we're going to wrap up the paragraph with a link sentence, where you're going to link the point back into the overall topic. It's almost like a summary sentence of the paragraph. And please always check your academic integrity guide to ensure that you are citing correctly in your evidence section. And here's an example of a peel paragraph. This is a history example. You can pause the video and have a read of this. Here is another example. This draws on information from the Department for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy, and it's about carbon emissions and greenhouse gases. And here is another one. This is about poverty and its impact on children. You can pause the video and have a read of this. And finally, this is a business style peel paragraph. And this is about corporate social responsibility, and in particular, recyclable packaging and reducing CO2 output. You can see an example from Yeo Valley has been drawn on in the yellow section. Let's get thinking again. From the examples on the handout, which I will slowly flash up on the screen in just a moment, which follows a stronger academic structure and style, and why? You can take 4 minutes for this task. Here are 2 introduction examples. Which is stronger and why? Pause the video and jot down your ideas. Here are a set of main body paragraphs, A and B. Which is strongest and why? Also, on the right hand side you can see 2 conclusion examples. Which is strongest and why? Pause the video for a little bit longer because there's a lot more to read through on this particular page. Did you get it right? Introductions A and B. Which one is strongest and why? It's B. Sample A features contractions like don't, which should be do not, can't, which should be cannot. You can see sample B uses signposting language. This essay will focus on, in particular, ultimately. The tone is more formal and academic. Sample A repeats itself. We've got things like it might mean, which might mean, all in the same sentence. Whereas we've got that stronger flow in the second example. So we're going for sample B. Now let's look at the main body paragraphs. Which is strongest and why, sample A or sample B? Did you get it right? It is sample A. Sample B, quote drops. You can see the impacts of poverty on growth and development is just a sentence filled with a quote. And that doesn't demonstrate your understanding of the topic or your interpretation of what you've read. Whereas sample A paraphrases from the sources. Equally, sample A synthesises sources. It brings together more than one source that agree with one another about a topic. We've got the Education Endowment Foundation and Joseph Rowntree Foundation, who have both indicated a strong connection between poverty and poor nutrition. In sample B, it's been quite definitive. It says families from poor backgrounds will feed their children. But how do we know that? Whereas in sample A, you can see hedging language has been used. While this does not suggest that all children, it does suggest that they may. So we're kind of hedging our bets, we're not being definitive. Sample B again uses contractions, and the tone is less formal and academic than sample A. So if you said sample A, well done. And finally, the conclusions, which is strongest and why? Well, sample B, you can see, is actually quite short and it doesn't do too much. It just kind of summarises what has been said in the essay. Whereas sample A actually summarises. It notes the significance of that summary. And it also notes what the next steps might be. However, to be most effective, these strategies should be combined. So we're going for sample A in this. I hope that was a helpful exercise for you. Well done. Proofreading and editing is a really significant part of academic structure and style. So before you submit your work, ensure you leave time to proofread and edit to iron out any errors. You can read it out loud. You can podcast it on your voice memos and listen back to it. You can form a proofreading group with people on your course. You can proofread with a friend from a different course and see if they understand what you're saying. You could use Redwood Inc.'s Reduce Your Word Count, which is a really great website article on cutting word counts if you've gone over. I'll flash that up on the screen in just a moment. You can use Microsoft Word Editor, which is really great for spelling, punctuation and grammar. And finally, don't forget to check your citations and references using your Academic Integrity Guide. And moving forward, for further help with your academic assignments, please head to Scribr. Some great step-by-step guides on writing introductions, main bodies, conclusions. Academic Phrase Bank is your go-to spot for sentence starters. And finally, I'll repeat it one last time, use your Academic Integrity Guide for APA 7th referencing. Thank you for being with me today. I hope this was helpful.